Hi, y'all. We're back after a short break. And here we've got something that's, I think, very well positioned in this series of discussions because we've talked a lot about the systems you build and the way you build efficient systems and the way you make them work. But at heart, there has to be integrity in the data you're using. There has to be a governance structure in place. And we're very, very fortunate to have Rebecca Schauer Robertson, who goes by Becky. Fine, that's correct.
Yes.
And Becky's been in financial services and risk strategy mitigation for 25 years, although no one would ever guess that to look. And she's got a recently started role at Atlantic Union Bank. She's the bank's BSA and OFAC, serves as a BSA and OFAC officer and responsible for ensuring banks' compliance with all facets of the Bank Secrecy Act, the U.S. Patriots Act, OFAC, all these wonderful acronyms that some of us know all too well. Prior to that, she was the executive vice president and director of AML compliance at South State Bank, where she created and advanced their BSA, AML, and OFAC programs and performed enterprise-wide training to educate all personnel, which, as we know, is really important. And of course, she's trained in CAMS and all those sort of things. So we're very, very fortunate to have her here for a chat. And one thing I wanted to do is just start off at almost a fundamental way. It's a laying out, as I sort of said, you got to clean up what you got. I think you said to me when we talked on the phone the other day. So tell me, just data governance and why is it so important?
Well, I agree with the comment you made a few minutes ago. This really falls in line with what the other speakers have talked about this morning. I think Joseph touched on quite a bit of it. When you think about regulatory compliance, it really is all about the data and knowing your customer. So as we onboard a customer from the inception of that relationship throughout the relationship with the customer, we know our customer very well. We gather all the components like Joseph touched on, KYC, KYB, all of those components, but then you take that information and what do you do with it? And now it really is all about analyzing that information and comparing that to the customer due diligence information that you received when you open your account with your customer. Does this activity make sense? That's really the red flags that we're looking for with all the systems that we use, with the system that was just displayed. If we don't have good, solid, quality data and we don't manage that data, we're going to have skewed results in whatever we do. So that's where it becomes so important. Now, especially with the FinCEN guidance that recently was published about their thought process of really supporting a risk-based program and what does that look like? I mean, that's been something they've talked about for years. But in my opinion, we haven't really been able to effectively implement risk-based programs because you have audit teams that come in and look at your programs and they think about best practices, what they've seen throughout the industry. And really is a best practice allowing you to have a risk-based program. So when you think about data quality and data governance, you've really got to build out your program based on your risk profile of your financial institution, your risk strategies, and then you've got to effectively manage that.
So when you say risk profile of financial institution, tell me a little bit more about that one, because I kind of conceptually know, but tell me specifically what you'd be thinking about.
Yeah, so when it comes to AML compliance, of course, we're looking at the types of products and services that we offer, our geographic locations, the types of customers that we do business with. So my financial institution may look completely different than the guy next door. We may just be a small community bank, we may be a regional bank, we may not offer international products or services within our company. So we've got to really build our programs around that for monitoring. What are the important things for us within our financial institution for us to look at? It would be crazy for us to build out an analytic that looked at foreign transactions when we know we don't have any. So just because everybody else has an analytic built for looking at a foreign transaction queue, why would we be expected to do that? So those are the important things when you're looking at data governance and building out your program. What do you offer, and how are you going to align that data governance program with your inputs and outputs? What are you trying to achieve?
And who's usually in charge of this? Who usually owns this, and does it vary depending on the institution?
No, I really think that should be consistent across the institution. The ultimate ownership, I think, really needs to fall under a data governance group, if you will. But there has to be key players within all three lines of business. You know, your whole purpose of this data governance in a data warehouse, if you will, is so that you have all the information flowing into one spot, and that everybody's using this information from one single source, if you will, so that we're looking at information at the same kind of information, so that if I'm pulling a sample of something, I know that my sample is going to be looking at the same information as my business line QC. So to have a successful data governance program, you've really got to have a data quality management program under that umbrella, where you have key players at each business line. And when you're developing that, you've got to define what your strategies are, what your metrics are. Before you move into that, you've got to look at your data quality. You've got to clean that up. You've got to think about, do you have the resources to build out this program, to do the cleanup and build out the program? And do you have the resources to sustain this program and for it to be scalable as your bank grows, if you decide to go along those channels? Another thing I think that's really important about data governance is, which I think we've all experienced during COVID, you know, we're all looking at what can we do in the technology world to serve our customers better. Because like it or not, customers that were not computer savvy or tech savvy or had resisted maybe mobile banking, they've had no choice but to transition into using those features. And so for companies that really want to move into this space, in my opinion, you've got to build out a data governance process, and you've got to build out a good data management program under that, so that everyone understands the importance of that data integrity and the common goal that your financial institution is trying to achieve. Because if I want to build this out and I haven't partnered with my lines of business, and they don't have, if you will, skin in the game, they have no reason to make sure that the information that they're gathering at account opening is correct. If they understand the purposes of that and what the ultimate goal is for using that information, we all work collectively better. Another thing I like to say is, in our world, in the AML world, when we're collecting all of this information about our customers, it can be used for so many things, for cross-selling, for marketing, you name it. So that's another driving factor for folks to have a seat at this table and a vested interest, because we can use the information in so many ways.
So how do you give them skin in the game? That sounds like a management incentive or things you tie in. I mean, that's always a challenge when you come to a multi-part organization. If someone says, that doesn't affect me, how does one get them skin in the game?
Well, I think that's the top-down approach. You've got to have leadership who really support a data governance program, and that's where you come down to the design of the program as well. And you know, with anything compliance related, the people that sit in this seat, we've got to put on our sales hat sometimes when we go out and work with the folks in the lines of business, to really show them what the benefit is for them in the long run. And I think the most important piece is, we look at time management, you know, and cross sales. How much time are the folks on the front lines spending cleaning up exceptions when they don't do things the right way the first time? So the more that we can partner with them and the more that we can train them, and we have someone in a leadership position overseeing that, who supports the importance, that's really where we're going to get the buy-in, and we're going to have people who want that seat at the table because they're going to see the benefits for their participation.
And from all what you just said, it sounds like this can be particularly difficult if you're in an organization that's grown through acquisitions, because then you're bringing in whole different groups. And have you had experience with that?
Yeah, I've been through quite a few. So,
So give us an example of kind of what you've had to go through in order to get you to a better level of governance.
Well, the biggest challenge with any acquisition or the convergence of two different companies or two different families or people or whatever you want to say, really is the culture, and that is the driving factor of adoption of anything or continued implementation or sustainability, is really setting the tone from the top of what the culture is going to be and what the expectations are. So what I've seen, I've been very fortunate with the acquisitions that I've been a part of, is the tone from the top has been very strong, and that resonates through all of the business lines. It's not perfect by any means, it never is, but I think as BSA has gotten more focus in the last couple of years, it really has become the knowledge throughout the organization. As banks have shifted to the 3 lines of defense model, that has really supported BSA compliance and helped us to achieve better results across the board. But from acquisitions, biggest thing is culture and then data cleanup. You don't want to onboard new customers onto your system or into your AML monitoring system, especially with inaccurate data. So you've really got to do that scrub. And again, that comes down to resources, and that comes down to the focus of your company. Do we want to invest in this? What's the importance? And how much time are we going to spend if we don't clean it up on the front end, fixing it on the back end? So I think it is. I'm sorry, David, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
Well, I think it's, very achievable. I think it just really is your game plan and how you approach it.
And resourcing. It would strike me that you have to put the right resource against it, because sometimes you will have a lot of data and you have to either build something internally or find a good vendor. Probably the latter. Is the latter more common? Probably finding a good vendor for the data cleanup?
It is. But I too think going forward, as companies look at building out a good data governance program, and they look at the cleanup efforts that they have to undertake, it's great if you don't have the internal expertise or resource to find a partner out there in the fintech world, probably, who can partner with you on these things. But I also think it's important that companies look at the skill set when they're hiring to help achieve these goals, because you really do need to build into your plan for implementation of a governance program the right skill set and the right level of person within your resources.
And I guess finally, the impact of COVID, you mentioned that a little bit. Like COVID, a lot of things, as people said, it accelerates. It doesn't create new. It just changes trends that are already in place. How would you see that affecting or touching the topic we're talking about here about data governance?
Well, a big thing for us in the U.S. has been the PPP loans and people just onboarding those so quickly, which has been great for our small businesses, for our true small businesses, not the ones who have fictitiously came in to misuse the program. But as we have onboarded customers so quickly through that, I think having good, strong data quality management procedures and expectations from the front lines, that's critical to the success of these types of programs. so that afterwards we don't have to go back and do the cleanup. So I think not only has COVID impacted us to support even more why it's critical to start off with good information about your customers and make sure that you have that updated throughout the life of the relationship. It's also, as I mentioned earlier, shifted us to be more technical in our thought processes about what are we going to do so going forward, as far as products and services that we're going to offer. And now is the time where if you haven't offered online banking or an online account opening, I can see banks kind of shift into that too. So again, that's where you have to build out, what is our data governance going to look like? What are we going to, how are we really going to know our customers through what we collect from them? And how are we going to make sure that what we're collecting is good, solid information? So, I just think with COVID that this is just the beginning for the financial industry to shift toward a more fintech, if you will, partnership, and whether that means building that internally and finding the right resources to join your team, or if that's connecting with an existing fintech partner to help you achieve those goals.
Have you seen any particular innovation in making this easier to do? Any companies that have come up with new means to do so?
Well, there are a lot of companies out there. I think that, I won't name any in particular.
No, I'm not asking for that, but just, is that
Yeah.
something that,
I think that there are companies out there who are shifting their focus to that. What I really like to see are companies who aren't just building out ancillary products to hook onto something else that they offer. I would love to see someone who is an expert just in this space to jump in and really partner with a financial institution to say, tell us everything you need, and work with someone who's been there and done that, who can really help build out what a company needs to achieve these goals.
so rather than having the data clean as an adjunct to something else they do, making that and the governance a key part of what they're offering is, rather than just an ancillary to the main offering.
Absolutely. And the other thing I'll touch on too with the data governance and the cleanup, that it really supports the 3 lines of defense and the importance of your first line really taking responsibility and ownership of their data and building out a good quality assurance program within their line of business to ensure that they are identifying any pain points or issues quickly so that they can correct those. Because what you really want to do is have the alarms go off sooner than later, so you can find out what the root cause is of something and correct that, and then continue to monitor through quality control, sampling, testing of the entire population. But it really, quality assurance is the key to making sure that each line of business is doing what they need to do.
Well, this has been superb. I don't know if there's any questions. If there aren't, I just wanted to thank you very much for making time on a Saturday morning for a very informative discussion that helps tie together some of the things we've talked about over the last day or the last 2 days. And I also want to thank very much all the participants and Intelligentist for putting this together. This has been, the last 2 days have been very helpful to me, because these are things that I touch on in my consulting business, and informing me on some of the other challenges and some of the other options have been great. So again, thanks to the sponsors, thanks to all the participants. And if there's nothing further, I wish you all the best for the rest of your day.